Hello, hello. This is Patient POV, and today we're hearing from Allie, and I'm super excited for you to hear from her because she is discussing some medical conditions which we haven't yet heard about. So I'm super excited about that. She has a laundry list of conditions like she mentions in it, but it basically all started because of a concussion, so it's a traumatic brain injury. So I'm going to let her dive into all that. If you're watching on any of the recordings, I apologize for the quality of this intro and for like the positioning of it. I'm sitting on the floor doing one of these late night intro recordings, and I've got my hair in a top bun. So we're just getting this week's done. I'm was thinking about delaying it out a week, but I wanted to stick to my schedule because that was a goal I had this year. And I really do value what Allie had to bring to the conversation in her mindset and the way she approaches how she deals with things. So I was excited for you guys to get to hear from her, and I didn't want to delay it any further. So you'll get this as your intro today if you're watching on video. If you're not watching the video, just keep listening. It's all good. um, this week has been super busy. I had between school, work, um, life, trying to get enough rest in and caring for myself. It's just been a very busy week, and so that's why this was delayed so much. But that's quite all right because we're getting it done now, and it's going to get out to you before you know it. Well, you're listening to it, so that works. um, for this week ahead, we've had some really beautiful weather. My goal for you this week, if you can manage, is about drinking water. We had a really hot day, and I kind of feel like I got a little dehydrated today. And as somebody with POTS, that's not a good thing. Dysautonomia. We're supposed to drink lots and lots of water and our salt water and all this different stuff. And so, my goal for anyone and everyone, I think that's reversed. But anyways, for everyone is I encourage you to drink water and lots of it. And so I encourage you to make a goal. I won't give you a specific amount of how many water bottles you should be drinking or how much um, salt you should be consuming based on whatever, because I think everybody's different. There's some people that think it should be your half your body weight in ounces is considered how much water you should drink. Some people say, oh, you have to drink 4 liters a day. There's a bunch of different things out there that people believe in. I would say do your own research, figure out how much water feels good for your body. But I encourage you to set a goal at the beginning of the week and each day keep that same goal so that you are staying on top of being mindful of drinking lots of water, especially as it's getting warmer in Canada, at least in the spring months. I'm also, as I'm saying this about it getting warmer, my nose is also so itchy because the allergy season is out. So disregard that as well. But I do encourage you drink lots of water. Um, on that note, I also would love it if you followed me on Instagram at a Jess underscore and underscore Elda, which is ELDA. And you can head over to patientpov.ca and get to see more information about podcast episodes. You'll be able to see the blog as well as some freebies and product recommendations. And there's also, we have a discount code for you for some days at that's 15% off. And to get that, all you have to do is write Jess underscore and underscore Elda, ELDA, at the checkout when you're checking out under the coupon section. And I will also link it below. And yeah, you'll get 15% off, but it's an amazing company. They have so many products, which are typically like period relief products, but they also work on anywhere else you experience pain in general. Their cramp cream, for example, has been my absolute favorite. And I've used it for pelvic pain, but I've also used it for like my leg pain. My mom's used it for her shoulder pain, and we love it all the same. So yeah, I encourage you guys to treat yourself and get something. And they're also a Canadian company, so I love that very much as well as a fellow Canadian. But yeah, feel free to like and subscribe and leave a comment. I'll leave a question box for you. And so please feel free to answer it. Thank you so much. And I hope you guys all have a great week ahead.
Hello, hello. How are you today? Oh my gosh, so good. How are you? Good, thank you. Do you want to just start by giving an introduction on who you are and kind of your health journey background? Sure. So I'm Rheaume. I live in Massachusetts, and the roles that I do for work are I'm an artist, and I have my own art business, and I'm also a public speaker. And then I also volunteer and do a bunch of advocacy work and support within the disability community. And for myself, for the medical journey of life, really, I have navigated some medical conditions prior, but what really changed my life was sustaining a traumatic brain injury in the form of concussion, and at the same time having medication reaction causing tardive dyskinesia and serotonin syndrome, which really brought out the fact that a bunch of other diagnoses were going on. We just didn't know about them. And so now I have a laundry list of medical conditions that I navigate. Gotcha, yeah, for sure. And are you comfortable in kind of diving into what those might be as well? Sure. So the main ones that I navigate pretty much on a daily basis would be Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, dysautonomia, endometriosis, reactive ketotic hypoglycemia, narcolepsy with cataplexy, and auditory processing disorder. Okay, yeah. And so, out of curiosity, did the dysautonomia, was it spurred on because of the concussions, or was that completely separate? It definitely showed up after concussion. When I look back at medical records, I did have some indications. I looked at like old cardiology records and stuff, but nothing was ever diagnosed or really prominent. I mean, I was an athlete. I was a collegiate athlete, so whatever was going on was managed enough to still function. And then after concussion, that's what really brought everything out. I asked that because there are some people who have like POTS and dysautonomia and ES because of COVID. And I personally have POTS as well, but I got it before COVID even happened. And so it's just spreading awareness that COVID's not the only cause of dysautonomia. It came before then, and it also comes from traumatic injuries as well. So not just infection, but traumatic injuries. So thank you for sharing about that all. And would you be able just to explain a little bit about what the narcolepsy and auditory processing disorder, those two we haven't heard about on the podcast yet. I'm just wondering if you could touch on those. Oh, wonderful. An opportunity to shed light on them. So sure. Exactly, yeah. I'll start with the narcolepsy. That also occurred from the TBI, neurologically. So for what I navigate being narcolepsy with cataplexy, the narcolepsy piece, at least in my experience, it's in onset. It can be very gradual, but not like I'm falling over, falling asleep. And not just falling asleep like fatigue, but I mean falling asleep within a couple minutes. It's how quick somebody falls asleep that leads to the diagnosis of narcolepsy. There's actually a sleep latency test is what you go for. So throughout the day, they have you take 5 naps while you have electrodes on you, and they see how quickly you fall asleep. And that helps them determine the narcolepsy piece. And there's 2 types. And the type that I navigate is with cataplexy. So cataplexy is when the muscles just stop working, totally shut down, in association with that falling asleep with narcolepsy. So for example, my left arm may start to lose function. That's usually one of my first signs, is the left arm. My speech may become slower, and then slowly it's like they just shut down. And then sleep paralysis can also be part of that, where you're kind of awake, but you can't move any part of your body at all. So that's a little bit of the narcolepsy and cataplexy. Mm-hmm. And then the auditory processing disorder. It's not an issue with the volume of hearing. I actually have very good hearing. I can hear things that people don't hear. I have like hyperacusis. It's more so a neurological deficit, a challenge with processing the words that someone's saying while there's additional noises going on in the background. Or if someone's speech is not very clear, deciphering the word. The word hope to me may sound like boat, and it can be tough to understand language. Yeah, wonderful. Thank you so much for those descriptions. That was really great. And then just a follow-up question on narcolepsy. You're saying it's the time it takes to fall asleep. And so if you're falling asleep quickly, I feel like a misconception might be that, like, well, you must get a lot of good sleep, and then you feel very rested because you have so much sleep. Is that true? That's a great question. And no, so the challenge with narcolepsy is the disturbed sleep patterns. It could be during the day and or at night. So someone with narcolepsy may feel exhausted and even be falling asleep very quickly and fall asleep for, it could be 10 minutes, it could be 4 hours, but in the middle of the night, it could be up twiddling your thumbs because the sleep pattern is broken. So the goal is to try to sleep really well at night so it doesn't get as affected during the day, but that can be challenging. Right, yeah, for sure. And so you touched on those two in particular because I asked and I appreciate it. But you are affected by quite a few chronic illnesses. And so what would you say some of your most common challenges are that you face on like a daily basis or like a more common basis? Sure. I mean, when you ask that, Jess, it's such a good question. I think of the times where I probably feel frustrated or feel like I'm up against a wall in what I want to do to be part of society. And the top two things that stand out to me are the stamina, the fatigue, the falling asleep so quickly, that piece, because on average, people can get a good hour with me. You know, an hour and a half is a stretch depending on what I'm doing, and then 2 hours, oh boy, I mean, I'm probably barely functional. I'm probably like not there, but kind of there by 2 hours. And I really wish I could just go do whatever I wanted to any day and not have that barrier to face. And then the other would be mobility based. So when I was in the hospital after the TBIs and tardive dyskinesia and serotonin syndrome, I also injured my leg, and it led to peroneal nerve palsy in my left leg, which I now have a lack of reflexes and ability to fully control or function from my knee down on the left leg. And so that has created a barrier for me with the terrain that I'm able to walk on or whatnot, or if I'm using my wheelchair, barriers to where a wheelchair can go. So I think those would be definitely two of the big ones. And I'll sprinkle in the hypoglycemia because that's just sort of like an annoying thing that happens like all day, every day. Right, yeah, for sure. And so have you found any coping, well, it doesn't have to be specifically those three, but have you found any coping strategies that you're like, this is something I found and this really works for me, for anything that is a challenge? Yeah, I mean, it's real, right? The challenges are so real. And for me, one of the big things is to allow how I feel about them because I recognize that if I try to pretend or stuff it away that like, no, all's good, I don't feel frustrated or sad or anything, then it actually just makes symptoms worse. Like the body really holds on to that. So I think it's important to allow the feelings and then to also release things. So in terms of in an action step way, I try to tell myself like, well, okay, that's real, that's valid. Now let's sort of reframe that and what can I do? What am I grateful for? And that really helps to sort of pull me out of that space and have both things coexist and sort of help each other. The frustration, the sadness, plus the gratitude and the joy, and find that rhythm, if you will. Yeah, no, for sure. That was beautifully said as well. So that's perfect. Thank you. And so, what would a day in the life look like for you? Well, it's very variable, right? I do have some routines that are definitely everyday non-negotiable unless some odd circumstance. And that would be in my morning and in the evening. I have a very routine for those to like set up my day and end my day. So in the morning, I really like to start my day with an hour or 2 hours to myself to get ready for the day, which is gentle movement, breakfast. I read scripture and pray and chug water when I wake up. Really just try to set myself up for success for the day. And then throughout the day, I go back and forth between cognitive and physical tasks. That's the best way to describe my day. So like doing this with you today is very cognitive. So after this, I'll probably fall asleep for a little bit, but then I'll get up and go for a walk and really switch back and forth with the exercise or the checking emails, things like that, and putting restorative activities in throughout my day as well. And then at the end of the day, I am pretty strict with this because it works so well for me. Is again the last like hour and a half of the day, I turn off my phone, put it on do not disturb, and read a book. And trust me, I do scroll on social media throughout the day, and I'm on there and posting and doing all that stuff, but I don't do that in the first hour or last hour of a day. Okay, that's amazing, yeah. And then you mentioned you'll do like more cognitive and then more physical activities, but then you said you'll sprinkle in some restorative activities. And so what would that look like? Yeah, I love actually a post on Instagram. I'll have to pull it out about examples of restorative activities because I list them by ones that you could do anytime versus ones to do if you're physically tired, but you could do something cognitive and vice versa. So for me, if I need a cognitive break, restorative activities are walking, organizing, as long as it's not, again, not cognitive, more so like cleaning, organizing, exercises, things like that. And then if I need a physical break, some cognitive restorative activities I enjoy are reading and that's definitely my top one. Reading. Yep, reading. And then for ones for any time, I mean, I'm an artist, so painting, creating, embroidering, any of that sort of stuff. Wonderful, yeah. And so just so everyone can find you on Instagram, what's your Instagram handle? I can't remember what it's called. Yeah. I think it's different on every platform. Right, so. That's why I was like, there was the hesitation. Yeah. So on Instagram, I have two accounts. My main account that I was just saying I post all these like strategies and stuff is at alison.rheaume, which is ALISON.RHEAUME. And then my art account, which I need to start posting on there more, is at Embracing Unique. Wonderful, yeah. And so I will also have them in the show notes description section so people can copy and paste and find you. But I just wanted to say that verbally so everyone can remember to go follow you. And so now, how long you're saying you had a concussion and then more things popped up as time went on. How long have you been dealing with these chronic illnesses? So the concussion that changed my life and brought out a lot of these additional challenges was in 2016. So it's been 8 years. And at the beginning, I was non-functional. I was in the hospital at a 10% functioning level. So going from that to being here with you today, so 8 years worth. Yeah, no, well, you've come a long way, and I appreciate you taking the time here. And just wondering how the diagnosis journey was for all those other conditions that came up. Oh, terrible, terrible! I won't even filter that and pretend. No, it was tough because they're considered to be more rare. However, I feel like a lot of them are just underdiagnosed or underrecognized. So something like endometriosis, for example, like we haven't really touched on that one. I feel like that's one of the hardest things in the world to be diagnosed with because one, physicians need to know about it, and two, the only way to technically actually know and diagnose this is a surgery. And not everybody wants to just go jump on a table and in the OR and have surgery. So that one for me was the hardest with diagnosing. But all of them, every single one of them, has taken me doing research and learning and recognizing what's going on in my own body and really learning my own body and advocating for myself and experiencing a lot of gaslighting along the way, unfortunately. Yeah, no, for sure. That's always frustrating when you're in a state where you need help, but you are the one who has to almost turn into the doctor figuring out what's wrong, and then having to push for tests and results and all that different stuff. So that is really frustrating. And so, whereabouts in the world are you located? I'm in Massachusetts, which is great for medical care. Is it? Oh yeah, Massachusetts has all the Boston hospitals. Oh, right, yes. Name, yeah. Okay, and so do you feel like being in the location that you are in, do you feel that helped you get a diagnosis maybe faster than you would have if you were anywhere else in the United States? Honestly, probably, yes. I live about an hour away from Boston. So Boston's where all the major hospitals are. So when I was navigating these diagnoses just locally, I had a really hard time and didn't really get anywhere with them. But when I started taking the trek to the city and going to the best two hospitals, in my opinion, Brigham and Women and Mass General in Boston, that's where things really got put together for me because the care team, actually, they work together, which is amazing. Yeah. And so it's like that yes and no answer. Like locally, it was really tough, but with the top-notch hospital, I started to get more care, better care. Yeah, wonderful. Sorry, my hesitation on is that the best place? Like, I'm from Canada, so I'm not always familiar with everything that what the good hospitals in the States are. And so, good to know. That's wonderful. And so, when you started going through your journey, you got diagnosed with your things. At what point did you decide that you wanted to start advocating for the chronic illness community? From the very first day. Okay. So prior to concussion, I was working as an elementary physical education teacher. I was a coach. I was a kids ministry director. I was in all these roles that were very teaching and coaching. So it's just naturally within me that when something challenging occurs, aside from the initial feelings, in terms of action, it's just embedded in me to teach and to take a lesson from what I experienced and not only apply it to my own life, but have the desire to share it publicly in a respectful way that honors journeys without minimizing anyone. And so right from the beginning, as soon as I felt like I had the ability to, I was right on Instagram sharing my story. Amazing. Yeah, that's so great. And then you're saying you do some public speaking. What do you do public speaking for? That varies. Most of it is within the brain injury community so far. I am hoping to branch out and something like this. Like I'm so used to doing podcasts and public speaking within the brain injury community. And it's actually kind of nice to sit here and talk about some of the other disability related things or conditions I navigate. So that's what I have done, and we'll see where that leads. But a lot of conferences, or I also do a lot of webinars about various topics, strategies, even if they're hosted by a brain injury organization. I do webinars that can really reach anyone, particularly navigating chronic conditions. Amazing, yeah. And then I'm wondering, you are navigating multiple chronic illnesses, and so I'm wondering if you have any tips or tricks that you have found that are like, oh, this really works, or like products that you use that you really recommend, or those different types of things. Oh boy, we could talk about that for like an hour. So I think really what resonates with me the most is doing things as naturally as possible. And there's a time and a place for every decision, always. I just know that in my journey, when I started out and going more the route of pharmaceuticals and only conventional medicine care, I really wasn't doing well. And realizing like actually I was reacting to the medication. So if it even helped one thing, it was causing another issue. And it's just like this cycle of symptom after symptom. So one thing that's really helpful for me is just trying to honor my body where it is and fill in the gaps with natural stuff first before leaning towards any more emergency medicine or things like that or pharmaceuticals. So food, just healthy food, natural, and then supplements, drinking a lot of water. And then for other products or resources or whatnot, I'm a huge fan of community. So support groups that have a growth mindset, because I don't find it helpful to be in any sort of Facebook group or support group or anything like that when it's just complaining. I think it's really important to state how we feel and then be willing and open to receive support to help move forward. So support groups, and local organizations that help support the various chronic conditions. I'm sure there's tons of products out there too, but yeah, I don't know. That's a list I'd have to sit down and make. Fair enough, yeah. And then my last question for you today is I'm wondering if you have any words of encouragement or advice for anyone who's either like starting their health journey, they're like in the middle of a flare, they're just trying to figure out what's going on, anything like for anyone like that. Absolutely, absolutely. So the first thing I think is important for everyone to hear all the time and remember is that wherever you are today, that's okay. And whatever you're able to do today, that's okay. You are loved for who you are, where you are, with what you have, and what you're capable of doing. You do not have to prove that to anyone. I actually just posted yesterday about this term I made up called private productivity. Like, there's so many things you're doing on a daily basis that nobody sees that are very productive to your well being. And you may not get paid or recognized for any of those things, but they all matter. So, really honing in on those things, working on mindset and embracing a growth mindset, and then not doing it alone, getting within community and getting connected with people on social media or support groups or even local events just to have other people around you that can relate. Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much. And I forgot one last question for you is do you have any either I typically say like movies or TV shows or books recommendations, but it doesn't have to be anything related to chronic illness, just recommendations for good ones that you're into right now. Yeah, I was waiting for that question. I forgot to. I actually got rid of my TV after a concussion. Decided that I wanted to replace that with, painting or reading or stuff. So I'll go more. There's in addition to this podcast, there's one that I do listen to every week, which is the Walk in Love podcast. They're very funny and encouraging and give a lot of life insights. So I do love that podcast. And honestly, if I was going to seek that virtual entertainment, I'm usually using social media. So that's sort of my guilty pleasure. Fair enough, yeah. And you say you like to read a lot. Is there any books that you've been into lately? I decided to read novels for fun, and not like murder mystery because I read at night and that would keep me up, but just like silly romantic novels. I'm reading a bunch of Debbie Makeover books right now because she's written over 300. So I'm like, my goal is to read them all. But anything that is really wholesome, again, too, because it'll affect my mindset. And so anything that's nice and calming, and it still has the anticipation or I think challenges, but nothing extreme. So I love a good encouragement book along the way too. I love the author Jordan Lee Dooley. Her books are great. So yeah, kind of open with that. Wonderful. Thank you so much. I do want to say thank you again for joining me today. Oh, well, thanks for having me. It was great chatting with you.